Okay, I'm testing this Panasonic OmniMovie VHS recorder we bought at Goodwill for $25. Luckily, I had the power supply from another one that we bought for $5 plus shipping, an older one, and its CCD appears to have been blown. Here's a shot of how glitchy it looks with the broken CCD. Isn't that nice? Look at that. This one seems to work just fine. I'm in pretty normal light. I've got two indirect lamps and a overhead fixture. It's just normal room lighting. It's an auto white balance, but I think it's doing a pretty good job at the white balance. Here's some white. That looks pretty white. I look pretty white, and my hair looks pretty white. I thought I should say something too about the microphone that I'm using. I'm not using the onboard camera mic. I've mic'd myself a lot closer with a little old Radio Shack electric condenser mic. It's a pencil mic, got a little on-off switch, takes one battery, and it's omnidirectional. You can still find these on eBay for $30, maybe $20 if you're real lucky. They're worth it. And I'm using this mic instead of a good mic because the external mic jack on this camera has an 1/8 inch input, no XLR input. It's too bad Radio Shack has fallen on such hard times. I used to depend on them for so many groovy, cheap things. This microphone has been around for 30 years and it sounds fine to me. We should compare it to just using the onboard camera mic. Here I'm sitting about 5 feet away from the camera, and you're probably noticing a lot more room noise. It doesn't sound as present. Here's the big 1/4 inch plug. You just step that down to an 1/8 inch and go straight into the mic jack on a consumer level camera like this one. Alright, now I wanted to show you around this camera a little bit, and so to do that I'm going to have to record with a different camera, obviously. Now I'm shooting this on an old Sony Digital 8 camcorder, a TRV 280. I'm also getting an angle from a little Kodak Play Sport. This is the camera. If you look at the bottom, you see a little plate with a serial number and manufacture date. That's 1991 for this one. Grip it like this, goes onto your shoulder, it's nice and massive. You don't need some kind of aftermarket rig to steady it, because this thing steadies itself by being so dang heavy. And by so dang heavy, I mean it's maybe about 3 pounds. This camera has a lot of cool features on it that later consumer grade camcorders were missing. Manual focus, like you can switch from auto to manual, and you've got a little focus wheel right here. What this one doesn't have is a groovy zoom ring or a focus ring on the lens that the older version of this camera had. A nice zoom lever. This one doesn't have it. The little older camera does. These are Panasonic OmniMovie. You find them all over the place. These are pretty good quality. They're not as good as the Panasonic AG line. They were called Pro line. Some of them were called Reporter. But this is a pretty cool old camera. It's got a lens on it. That ain't too bad. These white balance features are kind of special. I wouldn't use them that much. Just set it on auto and forget it. It has a time-lapse feature that I wouldn't recommend using either because it kind of wears on the camera. One thing this camera does that you absolutely need it to do is you can lock focus. So you can take it off of autofocus, push a button to autofocus, and then let it go and it stays there instead of continually going in and out of focus. Here's your viewfinder. It doesn't have a swing out LCD screen like the newer ones do. You just do this. I'm going to eject the battery. These are old sealed lead acid batteries. Chances are, when you get them, these aren't going to work anymore. You can still get replacements if you can get the part number off of them. It costs 20 or 30 bucks for a replacement battery. What's very special though, and what this one didn't have, that the other one did have, even though the other one didn't quite work, is the power supply. This monstrous thing here is the power supply, and I'll tell you why it's very special. You may notice that I didn't show you any inputs or outputs on that camcorder. That's very unusual. What it does have is an input for the power supply, which looks like this. It's got a bunch of little pins in it. Bunch of little pins. That carries not only DC power, it also carries signal to the camcorder and from the camcorder. So you can use the camcorder as a VCR with, line inputs with this, and your way of getting signal out of the camcorder to some other device is going to be this too. The Panasonic Omni Movie was also sold by Quasar, and it was also sold as a Montgomery Ward's brand called Signature 2000. You can usually pick up the Signature 2000 versions of these for a little bit less, because nobody knows what the hell that is. It's just a rebadged Panasonic. They just silk screened a different name on the side. Here's the case for it. Everything back then came with groovy cases. So let me compare that with the same line from the same manufacturer from 3 years before. Here's the case from the Signature 2000 version from 1988. This thing is a metal case that could repel small arms fire. Here's the camera. Fortunately, I recognized the power supply on this new one here, not this new 1991 one. I recognized that the power supply was the same one as I had for this. Because when this came in the mail, I hooked it up. Actually, I took it out of the case and it looked like it had never been used. Never. Sadly though, all that time sitting there, the CCD appears to have been corrupted somehow, and it gives you a real weird zebra stripey noisy picture. This is a nice camera. Look at the optics on it. Consumer level cameras these days don't have cool lenses with a nice manual focus ring and a manual zoom lever, and that green button right there is for macro. That's a zoom with a macro. And this one happens really not to work very well. I mean, it does everything well, but shoot. The nice thing about these cameras is that it really feels like something when you pick it up and shoot with it. And it's got that kind of smeary old VHS look to it, and when you slap a tape in here and hit go, it goes clunk, whir, and it really feels like it's doing something. So it's fun. Resolution aside, convenience aside, these are fun. They're out there right now, you can get them. This one was from shopgoodwill.com. The other one's from the Goodwill store in person, and you see that we had to get two of them and sort of put them together to get one that worked. But that's the way it is with these old things. I'm going to take this one in to a repair store in town and see what they tell me. If it costs $100 to fix, I don't think I'll resurrect it, but maybe. Just because it's such a cool old piece of history and I'd like to get it up and running again. I don't think it was ever used that much. I think that the sensor chip just sat there in a box and rotted, and so when I pulled it out and tried it, it wasn't ready to go. Anyway, that's that, isn't it?